right. Hi. Welcome to You Didn't Get the Memo Show. I'm your host, Gloria Bailey Ray. Brought you something a little different, huh? It was a different opening to the show. So I want to welcome all of you guys to the You Didn't Get the Memo Show. I'm glad that you decided to join us. Listen, I want to give a shout out to all of you who are both tuned in nationally and internationally and say thank you. I am always humbled and honored that you decided to join us. You Didn't Get the Memo Show is about providing you, the viewer, with relevant, factual, mainstream information to help you be informed and to make good decisions. All right. We're streaming live right now, you guys, on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And our show today has been brought to you by Miss Joyce Van Hoof, who is of Memorial Insurance Service, Lincoln Memorial Insurance Services. Got a great show for you today with my awesome guest, Miss Felicia Freeman. And I want to remind all of you guys, the show is interactive. So if you have questions, place them in the comment section. We'll do our very, very best to respond to them and get you answers. Or just if you have comments to make, that would be great. So before I bring my guest on, I just want you guys to think about this. You all, or where we've all been impacted by the pandemic. The world of recruiting in itself is changing. The pandemic, of course, has contributed to pulling the covers off, or I would like to say, pull those scabs off, as it were, with companies that were not in touch with DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion. According to a blog that was actually written by Clear Company in 2022, it states that the importance of workplace diversity cannot be understated. Now, if you're a person of color, we already know that. We understand this. And look, the business case has long been made with Harvard Review reporting on the value of a diverse workforce since 1996. Diversity boosts creativity, innovation, leads to better decision making, and results in a more professionally enriching environment. Additionally, people themselves, employees or potential employees, they prefer to work for companies that walk the walk, not just talk the talk about DEI. And, that's really, really important. And here's the thing, since the pandemic, candidates are very selective, and they have every right to be. Listen, think about this for a second, that top companies hire 242%. That's right, 242% more Black directors in 5 months in 2020. That was following the death of George Floyd. And that staggering 242% made it really clear that more diverse hiring is possible. But you know what? Companies need to commit to doing it. They just can't say, this is my top five and this is what I'm going to do. And the one last little nugget I'm going to leave you with this before I bring on my guest, is that at top companies, only 8% of C-suite executives are Black. Think about that. 8%. At the 50 most valuable public companies in the US, only 8% of top executives were Black. At least 8 companies, that includes Walmart, I know a lot of y'all shop Walmart, employed no Black executives at all. And so just think about the fact that it is really, really important that we look at the hiring practices and what's going on. But today we're going to talk with senior diversity recruiter, Miss Felicia Freeman, because we're going to talk about, what does your resume actually say about you? And we're going to delve into some of these things that I talked about. So I want to welcome to the show, Miss Felicia Freeman. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hello, thank
All
you for
right.
having me.
Holla,
Hello.
ATL. How you doing?
ATL, doing wonderful. How are you out
I'm
there
doing
on the West
good. I'm
Coast?
doing good. West Coast, right?
Yes,
West Coast.
indeed. Yes,
But we're
indeed.
glad to have you. And
Happy to
you
be
heard
here.
me open up. We talk about some of these staggering statistics. And for
Yes,
you as a senior diversity recruiter, you've been doing this for a very, very long time.
Yes.
And I know that you can embrace and understand where I'm coming from when I read these type of statistics. And still in all, and the one piece, the nugget that I left out is that men are still preferred and hired over women. And here's the
Yes.
interesting thing: there's a gender bias with women not hiring other women. So
Yes.
we need to correct and change some of these things. But let's just jump in. People know that you're in Atlanta, so I holler the ATL. So,
Yes,
but let's talk
indeed.
about your backstory. Just spend a couple of minutes, where you grew up, and anything you want people to know on the educational front, because of course we're gonna get into how you got into recruiting. So I'll kick it over to you. Take it away.
Awesome. Happy to be here, everybody. I'm Felicia Freeman here in Atlanta and been recruiting for, as Gloria stated, over 24 years or so. And grew up in Ohio, Midwest girl, came to Atlanta in 1993, and this has been home ever since. And being in this space, to a point of Atlanta, you see diversity in Atlanta across the board. That's what kept us here as a family, to see the diversity, to see the success of diverse people, to see success of people that look like you. Growing up in the Midwest, you don't see that as much. Geography has a lot to do with diversity, if you will. And so, with that being said, happy to be here in Atlanta where diversity is our culture. And I've been in diversity recruiting for like over 24 years and got into recruiting by mistake, actually. I say it by God's hand because I wasn't planning to do that. I was in sales with the Atlanta General Constitution, I was an account executive with them and was okay with that. I was in a good space, but met somebody, and as God would have it, asked me to interview, and here I am now, 24 years later, in the diversity space. And to Gloria's point, so much to talk about, so much to expand on there, but that's me. I went to the University of Akron, Ohio, and 4 children, and really committed to helping people who look like me. That's how I look. That's how I met Gloria, helping people that look like me. That's how I met Gloria. Yes, indeed. So
Yes,
happy to be
yes,
here.
yes. Yeah, and it's interesting how life comes full circle. And like you said, you've been doing this, what you say, 24 years or so.
Yes,
That
yes,
that's a really long time. And of course, you have the bandwidth to understand, and you saw how this actually happened. And if I could tell this little story, um, one of the things in pharmaceutical sales. And actually, the person how I met you was through Kevin,
yes,
who ran ExecuSearch.
yes,
And one of the things was just what you said, companies who they knew they needed to do something, but they
yes,
weren't for sure what they needed to do. and
yes,
and looking back, of course, over the years, I realized that one of the things that probably ended also happening with a lot of companies was the fact that they weren't trained on how to deal with someone that was non-white.
yes,
Right?
yes,
And
yes,
so rather than being able to compare resumes, being able to look at skill sets and understand what this person could bring to the table. And I really hope that you're going to share that some of that shifting. We know that it's not going to happen overnight, but there
sure,
needs to be a big portion of that. And so through Kevin, one of the first, Black people to be hired and working
yes,
in this pharma company.
yes,
And it was talk about feeling like you are on an island all by yourself because
yes,
people didn't know what to say. They didn't know how to say. And, a lot of those good old boy jokes just did not
indeed,
go over
yes,
with me. And I'm from the
yes.
South. And I'm like, I ain't taking that mess.
You
So
can't talk to me like that.
and it not be okay. I don't think
Exactly.
so. And so understanding that that wasn't the angry Black woman, that was
Yes,
someone who was standing up for themselves and saying, this was not how I was raised. This was
yes,
not acceptable. And
yes,
people not understanding how people are brought up. And that's a big part
yes,
of what's happening in corporate America, just not really understanding the people that you're dealing with and trying to get to understand them and to know them, right?
yes, exactly.
So you talked about you got into recruiting But let's talk about how your focus came. It's really and truly on diversity, on diverse
Yes.
candidates, or was this always the focus? Yeah, did you just kind of fall into that, or what happened?
Exactly. Met Kevin that you mentioned, and Kevin, of course, had a diversity firm, Executive Search, and that was our focus: diversity. That's what we were experts at. That's what companies hired us to do, i.e., Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Amgen, Genentech. We really had a great, I would say, client base who was committed to diversity. Gloria mentioned that in her opening statements. You have to walk the walk and talk it at the same time. So you're walking and talking. And companies who hired us were walking and talking, meaning they're speaking about it, but they're moving in the direction of let's make it happen. Let's get results. And so that's what happened to us. And so diversity has always been my focus. Starting with Kevin, learning about diversity. I think, again, I was in sales. So diversity was not something I really knew. So I had to learn that environment and learn that gen, uh, I would say, opposition, things that happen in the diversity space that I would have never known had I not been a recruiter. And so when you partner, as we did with Executive Search, I was there for 11 years, and we were a franchise diversity recruiting firm across the country. We had office in Atlanta, office in Virginia, Chicago. Our corporate headquarters was in Philadelphia. So we were truly a benchmark for a diversity owned firm that focused only on diversity. And so it was somewhat of a blessing because I met so many wonderful people, you guys, people that I still talk to today, i.e., I'm here today because of Gloria when she met Kevin 20 something years ago. And so diversity is an initiative, but it's also, you guys always remember this, it's an initiative, but it is a culture wherever you are, whatever company you are working for. If the culture is not diverse, that's going to become challenging for you.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And speaking of what a great segue into this question. What do you think, in your opinion, is the most difficult aspect of working in a diverse or building a working diverse environment? Right. Because like you
Yes,
said, people say those are my top five. They have these meetings at the beginning of the year and we need to hire more people of
yes,
color. And
yes.
and I'm going to say two things in here. When I hear people say people of color,
Hmm.
but a lot of companies say, well, I hit that mark because I hired a female, Asian
Yes,
American, or
yes,
Hispanic, Latino American, but you
yes,
didn't hire a Black person, right?
exactly.
And so, when we talk about working in this environment, what would you say is the most challenging or most difficult aspect of trying to
Yes,
meld all of that
put that
together?
together.
Right.
It's about education, Gloria. And what I mean by that, you guys, is if they don't understand what diversity really should look like, that is our challenge. And when I was with Executive Search, I had to go to some of the top companies, Amgen, Genentech, top bio2 companies in the world, who did not understand diversity and what that really meant. To Gloria's point, just hire somebody of color. No, diversity has many layers. You have ethnic, you have gender, you have thought process, you have background of how you grew up, and that's part of diversity as well. So the most challenging thing is education. I'm doing it now, and with Keysight Technologies, I totally transitioned out of pharmaceuticals and in technology. And this space is very challenging because you've got people who've been doing the way they've been doing things for 20 plus years. And now here I come, here the diversity executive team comes to try to change your thought process. That is the challenge because the way people grew up, these things
Mhm.
play into the executive world, in these companies, in these corporations. And so
Yeah.
that's our greatest challenge.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Yes,
So up until a few years ago, all you heard was D&I, diversity and inclusion, right?
yes,
And so when and why was this equity piece put in place? Because now they're saying DENI. So
exactly.
diversity, equity, and inclusion. And
Correct.
even when I hear that word, the piece equity,
Yes.
is it really equitable? And that becomes the question. So, you know,
Yes.
how did this all kind of like all of a sudden take on a different spin, and it's now included in diversity and inclusion?
To be honest with you, this is from a legal perspective.
Okay.
Many class action lawsuits that started the process of DE and I, equitable. Do they have weight in the company? That's really what that really means. Do you have weight in this organization as a diverse candidate when you come into this environment of people who don't necessarily look like you for the full scope? However, that equity is the weight of you being there. And I'm living that right now. I can speak to that right now because I am the equity of my presence within Keysight as a diversity program manager, senior diversity recruiter. There's weight to this role, and there's weight when people come in. So the DE, that equity, is bigger than the inclusion, in my opinion.
Mm.
And so, we all know in 20 we had the big deal. Unfortunately, God rest his soul. We lost someone who looks like us, and that truly, Gloria, and people in the audience, that changed the entire scope of diversity. And
Wow.
you may say, how? Because that was visible to the world,
Yes. Yeah.
and it changed everything for the organizations, for these companies, for the senior leadership, the C suite. They had to really step back and say, wait a minute. Plus, you have, within your organization, diversity candidates who were challenged by what happened with George. Challenged. So it started to, I would say, even though we were working through the pandemic and we were working,
Mm.
virtually, that friction was still showing up.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I was on a call during that time, and they were asking, how are you feeling? What are you thinking? And to Gloria's point, they don't understand. And so with the George Floyd situation, it took folks who don't look like us aback because they
Mm.
felt the weight, that DE, that equity, they felt
Yeah.
the weight of the diverse candidates who worked for them. They felt it. They
Mm.
felt it in action. They felt it in even just the way we continue to try to press forward, but they could feel the weight of what happened to us. So through George, because it happened to us, it happened to him, it happened to us. And so the companies had to pay attention to what is happening with my employee, what's going on. So they had to have, counselors come in, things that they would have never done until that happened. So that incident, I say, God works all things out for the good. It has worked out for the good of us who are still here and fighting in the corporate space, if
Right.
that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah, fighting the fight. We have a question from one of the viewers. They wanted to know, if they don't understand diversity, can you change a person's mindset?
You may not change the entire mindset, but you will change the perception. Meaning, when I went to Amgen years ago, the mindset was there's no diverse candidates in oncology. There's none there. Perception is what executive search was able to achieve. No, there are diverse candidates in specialty in pharmaceuticals, a smaller percentage, maybe 5% at that time. But we can train somebody because those skills are transferable. And what happened? The perception changed, and they hired an entire sales force dedicated to diversity. Some of those folks are still there, have been promoted. The perception changed. The mind may not have changed, but the perception has.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think of this story, real quick story, and we're going to take a really quick break. Is through Kevin, ended up getting this position. One of the first one, I knew that I was way underpaid by $10,000.
Oh my
Unfortunately,
goodness.
the HR person passed away. Uh, everybody's everybody's package, and I was at the head of the table, so I got to read what everybody else made, but
Oh
me.
boy.
And the other piece of that was, I was taken over and put in this what they considered a crap territory, right? Because it was a
Ah,
lot of BIPOC people, and
yeah.
people were saying, I'm fearful of going in there, and of of course, in less than 6 months' time, which I still have those checks. I mean,
I love
thirty-six
it.
thousand dollars my first bonus, thirty-six
Yes,
thousand my second bonus, and no one
yes,
had ever made more than $2,000
yes,
bonus, right? And
yes,
so they started to look at that. I did get a raise, but the fact of the matter is that it made me feel like that I wasn't good enough to be in a
yes,
in another territory that was performing really well. And of
yes,
course, once the territory was up and doing really well, then of course that became, those revolving doors. You take me out and put me into an underperforming territory. So
yes.
we'll talk, more about that. I'm certain people who were tuned in can really, really relate to that. They probably given three
It's
snaps.
like, yay.
Yeah, I know. But we're going to take a really quick break. And when we come
Okay.
back, I'll give you time to think about this. What is your biggest piece of advice for getting started with becoming a DEI recruiter? Because
Okay.
I know a lot of people are now looking at doing something different. So, what would be your advice? So, you guys don't go anywhere. Put your questions in the section. I'm tongue tied this evening, and we'll do our very best to respond to them. But, guys, don't go anywhere. And thank you so much for hanging in here. We'll be right back.
Have you ever seen somebody treated unfairly because of the color of their skin?
Do you guys know what it means to have white privilege?
What is racism and what do you think about it?
Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
All right. If you guys are just tuning in, I am having a dope conversation with my guest, Miss Felicia Freeman, who's a senior diversity recruiter. And before we took that quick break, one of the questions that I posed to her is what would be the biggest piece of advice that she would give to someone who's wanting to start out as a recruiter, and in particular, a DEI recruiter. I think that's probably the term there. Nobody's just saying diversity and inclusion.
Exactly.
They want the equity piece up in there as well. And so there are a lot of people who would really, really be excellent at doing this.
Sure.
So what advice would you give to them, Felicia?
The first thing I say is you have to have passion. You cannot fake passion. We can't teach passion. But if you don't have passion for diversity, success will be a challenge because it's a hard space. It's opposition, and you have to be able to fight the opposition, understand strategically, you have to be very strategic, but your passion needs to be there. That's the first thing you need. You must have passion or it will be a challenge for you. The second piece will be to understand, get to understanding, educate yourself on what that looks like. Research companies that do well in the space, find out why they did well in the space, get information so that you're equipped to go into such a role. Because when you come into a diversity recruiting role, DE&I, talent acquisition team member, they expect you to come with information. They expect you to come with results. And so that's why I say educate yourself, passion, and then just really being strategic about your career. Okay, DE&I has changed so much from when I started back in 98. So what does that look like for you? And where do you want to go? And what impact do you want to make? I took the position I currently have. I've been there about 6 weeks. I've been with Keysight. I took this position because I wanted to make impact in a space that's challenging, in a space that is not equitable. And so you have to decide, what do I want to do? What do I want my brand to look like if I were to get such a role? My brand, I want to make impact. I want to change lives. That's what I did when I was with the recruiting firm for 11 years. With people who look like me. I want to do the same in this space with technology. So passion, educate, and what do you want to do regarding your career?
Yeah, I love the fact that you use the word impact. What's your impact? And
Yes.
that comes back to one of the things, I sign everything authentically. It comes back to, are you living up to your true authentic self, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
part of that is that equity piece. I really want to know how much skin I have in the game. And
Yes.
I think that's really clear. So let's transition, and let's talk a minute, Felicia, and I'll come back because I'm just moving around. But let's
It's
talk
fine.
about um, those individuals who've been displaced, those
Yes.
individuals who have been unemployed for a period of time,
Hmm.
those who have retired and they're wanting to return to the workforce. Because personally, one of the things that I see, the first thing that people do is they go to LinkedIn and they say, oh, he or she been out the game for two or
Yeah.
3 years. And
Yes.
so, for me, that equity piece, when you've done this for 15, 20 years,
Yes.
you have some skin in the game. And it's not like pharmaceuticals have changed that much, right?
No. Correct.
So, what advice do you have for those people who are trying to return to the workforce and for whatever reason? There are people who just been unemployed. I remember going on an
Yes.
interview and they said, well,
Yes.
why were you unemployed? And the thing is, the guy didn't know that I knew the person that he used to report to. He's now regional. And I'm like, he been downsized 5 times. You sweating me.
Right.
So I'm just
Right.
saying, let's keep it real here because
Keep it real. Yes.
they have these questions and they want to know. So what would you
Yes.
say to them? How do they navigate that, especially as it relates to what their resume is saying about them?
So, of course, your resume is what people, it is your brand. That resume is your brand. So, that resume has to be simple, concise, and full of who you are, i.e., accomplishments, i.e., leadership roles, full of who you are. The resume is your portrait. And when we see the portrait, now we see it online more than we see it, hand, paper. But we see it online, and we're looking. We're looking for certain words, depending on what you're doing. In sales, we're looking for accomplishments. We're looking for increase. We're looking for goals, exceeded goals. We're looking for um, meets expectations or exceeds expectations on your performance reviews. We're looking for certain buzzword words. So that resume is truly your portrait. So take the time to do it effectively. If you don't know how to do that effectively, certainly we'll have Gloria share my email so that you can send it to me, especially when you're trying to enter, as Gloria stated, enter into the workforce once again. The pandemic, I'm still in shock, you guys, as a recruiter. We talked about this today in one of our meetings. The employee, the market right now is the employee's market. If you don't know that, it is truly the employee's market. And what do I mean by that? We've got candidates. I may make an offer on Tuesday. They may have 3 additional offers, maybe $10,000 to $20,000 more than what we offered on Friday. So that is the environment we're living in. We're having meetings now trying to figure out strategically, how to recruit more effectively. What can we do to build up the brand? So you're in the driver's seat right now. If you're trying to enter into the market again, you're in the driver's seat and you've not been working. Okay, that's fine because we've been in a pandemic. What have you been doing? Did you start a business? Did you create, like Gloria has, did you create something that is affecting the world globally? What have you been doing? I'm sure no one has just been sitting around, listening and watching TV. That's not what we do. So you've been doing something. So put that on the resume and build that up. That would be my advice as well.
Mm. Excellent advice, because I think a lot of times people think, well, I didn't really do anything. Well, yeah, when I look at some of those just online resumes for a mom, what I did is, I put together a financial plan and a
Yes,
savings plan, and I did
yes,
this for my kids and what have you. Now,
yes.
that piece is good, but it still will come back to, what comes through to you as the diversity recruiter, and what people, what you pull out and what they see as well. But we have a question from
Oh,
the
yay.
viewer, and it was, do you have resistance when they actually see you, Miss Freeman? And I'm assuming you're asking when candidates see you, or are you saying people in corporate America? I'm not for sure, uh, what exactly, but I'm certain that there's some resistance, to. I mean,
Yeah.
let's be real. We still live
Yeah.
in
Oh,
America.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
That's the real world,
And resistance is fear. It's just fear.
Right.
Fearful of the unknown or what you think you don't know, but you actually
Hmm.
probably know it already because we're all human beings. At the end of the day, God made us all. And so when they see me, to your point, um, with your question, I don't get that as much.
Yeah.
And it's probably because my personality, I try to be, very warm and inviting, and I don't come across as, rigid and tough. One of the managers told me this last week. He's a white manager. He said, "Felicia, you're like a lamb." He said, "But you're gonna have to do a pit bull sometimes." And so I said, "Okay, okay." So because he's like, "You're so impressionable," and we love that in this culture that you just
Hmm.
come to 6 weeks. So I haven't seen that as much. Even back in '98, I didn't see resistance. I felt it, didn't see it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's a difference if that makes sense.
Yeah, he clarified and he did say in corporate America.
That's what I
So,
thought. Yeah,
so yeah. And to your point, you're absolutely, it's not like you can go and touch a pulse, right? But you
exactly.
can feel it.
Yes,
It's palpable. You're like,
yes.
oh, okay. And I say how they want to slide in there. So now tell me, how did you get to this role? Now tell me
Exactly.
how. And
Yes.
honestly, I need to just do a class on how to respond, to those particular
To those
questions, right?
questions.
How did
Yeah,
you get here? What does that mean? The same
yeah,
way you did.
yeah.
My
Exactly.
skills and
Yes,
experience speaks for itself. And we need to be
exactly.
okay as people of color to be
Yes,
able to say that in a
yes.
sound way. Somebody would tell you that, what's working for you, you need to be a pit bull. Well, just because that may be what you may be doing doesn't necessarily mean that they're getting the same results that you are. And so it's
Yeah.
amazing the things that people will say. And then I'm hoping that they'll go back afterwards and say, now why did I say that? Right.
Yeah, because so my colleague who's white, Monica, they call her the pit bull because she goes in like, no, we're not doing that. So he was trying to make a point saying, Felicia, you got to be a little more tougher. These guys don't listen, is what he was saying to me. And that's why he said that.
Yeah, well, I say results are results, right?
Yeah, they are. I agree.
And
Yeah.
that's the main thing. So thank you for clarifying that, Al. Okay, so I do know that being a diverse recruiter can be beyond. I'm saying it's my challenging work. All right. So, how do you navigate dealing with managers that have not embraced hiring a diverse candidate? Because there's still people out there to say,
Oh, yes.
I'm hiring somebody that look just
Oh,
like
yes.
me, and
Oh,
and
yes.
that's just it. And they will fight you tooth and nail.
Oh, yes.
Skill set to skill set. And at the
Yes.
end of the day, isn't it about who I'm comfortable working with? Isn't it
Yes.
about? So, how do you deal with that?
So for me, my approach, and I'm very grateful for it. I've won awards for it. My goal is to make everybody feel like they matter. When a manager says, to your point, Gloria, this is who I want to hire. I want to hire Jim. I know Jim. I worked with Jim for 20 years. Okay, you know Jim, but there's somebody else you should get to know. And let me tell you why. And then I stack. I'm a stacker. I'm going to stack the information. She has an MBA. She finished top of her class. She finished top of the Salesforce Rookie of the Year. I'm going to stack. And in that stacking, that helps me navigate wherever I am because talent, to Gloria's point, is talent. And what happens with these managers who give that resistance to me? It's really fear, you guys. I've seen it. It's fear of the unknown, of what they don't think they know, but it's really not even there, what they think they may know. And so I am the peacemaker. That's what I do. And so I try to put that marriage together. Can you have a conversation with her? Can you have a conversation with him? And just see what I'm talking about in reference to their personality and skill set.
Mhm.
Always, almost always win that battle. And then what happens, 50% of the time, they say, Felicia, you know what? She was great. Oh my goodness. I didn't know that she went to such and such school. And so again, the fear of the unknown. And so my goal is always to navigate that as best I can.
Right. Okay. So we got a couple comment. Thank you, Al. He said we're so smooth with handling folks. That's all. But we do have a question from Miriam. Hey, Arkansas in the house. Publicly funded organizations who are required to aim for racial equity in their hiring. How can the public hold these entities accountable to be intentional in their recruitment of diverse workforce? In my hometown, they act like they can't find qualified people of color. Girl, come on.
Of course,
all right.
Of course.
Okay. All right. So, Felicia, I'm going to punt that to you.
So that is a cop-out. When they say we can't find, are you looking? That's the question. And to your point about making them accountable, you have to go into that space and say, where are we looking? Who have you interviewed? Who have you talked to? You have to make them put those numbers. Numbers matter. Put those numbers of who you've been talking to. How many folks have you interviewed? And what did they, what was the background? Where have you looked? That is very key. Where have you guys looked for talent? Because if you're looking in a place that we don't exist, in a demographic, if you will, that we don't exist, then that's a challenge. But are you looking in those spaces that we may exist? So, I had a search I was working on when I was with BD before I took this job, wanted a field engineer in Columbus, Ohio. And it was a challenge. I said, let me go to the Urban League. Let me go to a place where I know there should be some type of connection with people who look like me. So my question is to that group, you hold them accountable publicly, public organizations, where are we looking? Because in Urban League, sororities and fraternities, that you've got to get that network going because we're there. You just have to dig a little bit deeper, but somebody has to hold them accountable to do that.
Yeah. Well, you got 4 hearts on that response.
Okay.
Where are you looking? Because that is so key. And, one of the things and why you are such an asset to an organization and why they really need to have a DEI person that looks like us, because we know now you would think how long has, fraternities and sororities and,
yes.
the NAACP
yes.
and the African American Chamber of Commerce, how long have these organizations been around, right?
Yes.
But they're not thinking that we need to go there. And this is where you're going to find quality candidates and people who can do the job. And I think that's really critical. And that's a whole nother level. So who you guys, if y'all are listening to Felicia, your company, you need to understand that the sister understands her stuff. And so it doesn't happen overnight, but the thing is as you're sourcing for the right, because it also has to be the right individual too, right?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
I know that sometimes you can get people and you've dealt with that desperate scenario, I got to have a job, and you put them in the place. And your goal as a recruiter, if I may say this, is when you get someone hired, you're looking for them to stick and stay for a while, not for them to come and go and they're in and out in 90 days to 6 months. Would that be a correct assessment?
That is totally correct. Yes, it's very frustrating to be honest, because you put somebody in there, Gloria, you're like, this is a great and then they're they quit. What? They didn't even call me and tell me. That is very disheartening for me.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's disrespectful, but people need to understand that what goes around also comes around too, right?
Yes, it does.
And so you know what? All I can say is what they say, don't poop where you get your paycheck from. Because it'll come back to you, right? So that's the other piece. So let's get to the meat and potatoes. I know a lot of people want to know this. So let's talk resumes and applicant tracking system. I'm going to tell you, I know that there are a lot of ATS or applicant tracking systems, you guys, but which one seems to be the most popular, and how does a resume get to your desk? Because back in the day, I know even in hiring, I'm
Yeah.
going through 50,000 resumes.
Yes.
I would spend days and nights looking at resumes.
Yeah.
So, talk us through that process so people know it's not just you just say, oh, whoever bubbles up to the top, and
All
that's
right.
I'm just going to take the top 10, and that's going to be it. So,
And that's
will
what it
you
is.
speak to that, please?
So, to Gloria's point, back in the day, I would say 98 until about 2000 and maybe three, your resume went into a black hole. That's what I called it, because nobody was really looking through the ATS to focus on those resumes. So it would go in the black hole. And so you wouldn't hear from anybody. I'm sure you guys can attest to this. You wouldn't hear from anybody. Like, I applied for like 3 roles and I haven't heard from anybody. Why? Because nobody was really manning that application system. But you shift from like 2004 to now, the internal, and I've been on the corporate side, which I am now. This is what we do. We're in that system all day. Workday is your most popular. You're probably going to see that the most in reference to an ATS. You got Workday, Taleo, and ISIS as well. Those are your top 3 there. Workday is what probably I'm going to say 70% of companies are using. I don't personally like it the most because it can be a little challenging in reference to navigating when you're recruiting. But for the candidate, it's a good experience. And so Workday has truly taken over, in my opinion. Like everywhere I go, Workday, because of again, it's a good experience for the candidate. It's really all about the candidate experience. So there's no black hole anymore. There is a recruiter who has that requisition, and they are responsible for working that rep through the ATS.
Okay, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, Felicia, let's talk about what are some things that candidates need to leave off of their resume.
Yes, indeed.
And what are some things they really need to have on their resumes? And you kind of, delved into that. But let's talk about what people need to leave off of their resumes. So, you guys, thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for hanging in here. We will
Yes.
be right back after these few words. So, don't go anywhere.
Because of you, I feel not alone in this world. And you let me know that it only takes one person to make you feel wanted.
There's so many rewards in life. You coming into our home was one of the greatest rewards we could have ever had.
Okay, guys, if you're just tuning in, I'm just going to tell you, you're going to have to go back and watch the entire show. By the way, it is up on YouTube, it's on LinkedIn, it's on Facebook. But I am talking with my awesome guest, Miss Felicia Freeman, who is a senior diversity recruiter. And we're giving you some nuggets and things, or I should say, she's giving you, I'm just living in, my experience. And she's given it to you raw and real. And so before we went to break, one of the questions that I asked Felicia is, what are some of the things that potential candidates need to leave off their resume?
Oh my goodness. You see my face. I'm making a face right now. I'm like, oh my goodness. So you guys, this is very, very key. If you worked a job 20 years ago, take that off. You say, why? That's the experience. It is, but it's so long ago, it's no longer relevant to what they're looking for. Really want to see the 5 to 10 year rule. 5 to 10 years, that's what they're looking for. If you worked a job for 6 months, take it off of the resume because it's just adding space. Your resume should not even be more than 2 pages. And try to keep it to 1 if you can, but sometimes it's a challenge because if you've been in your career for a long time. 2 pages at the most. But if you did something back in college, it's on your resume. You don't need that now. We graduated, in 89. So we don't need that. I was the chapter president for the Student Black Union. No, take that off. And so we've got to stop putting things on the resume that don't have relevance now. We're in 2022 now. And so we've got to be relevant. That, as I stated before, that resume is your brand, is your picture. So again, if you worked something 20 years ago, that position needs to go. If you did something for 6 months or so, 6 months to a year, do not put that on the resume. If it's training and it's not relevant training to what you're looking for in regard to your next position, take that off as well. And I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, we've got a question. Okay, let me see. Here's one question. As a recruiter, is applying for a position multiple times a bad thing?
Not necessarily. It depends on the company, to be quite honest. Some companies I've worked for didn't really frown upon it. Some said, no, she or he has applied 5 times. That irritates. It depends on the company culture, really. So that question is 50-50. I'm sorry I couldn't give you a definitive answer, but it is a 50-50 question. It depends on the organization.
Okay. And Al, he's just,
Al is in there.
Al is in there. He says he needs you in the government system. It amazes him that when he go into a meeting and he's the only racing in the room.
It's okay, Alan. It's okay. I'll give you a hug.
Right. But now you have talking points, Al. We need to have more people, like ourselves, and that can be, intimidating. And I understand, exactly what that feels like and what that looks like. But one other thing, Felicia, on your resume, listen, I literally did see this. Somebody actually had on their resume goodbooty@gmail.com.
They did not. No.
And I'm thinking, who has an email address like that?
Oh my goodness.
If that's to garner attention, it garners the wrong attention. Hotbody@gmail.com.
Oh my goodness.
And I just want to put that out there. Look, like I said, I don't judge. I ain't judging you. But I'm saying if you're applying for a job, I don't know that those would be, the correct. And the thing is like, really, and so we have to be careful about the email addresses that are appropriate, right?
Yes.
I think that's the other thing. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I also understand on resumes you no longer have to put your address.
You don't. But I like to see it, because what happens when we have the background check? What happens when we have to fill? They're like, Felicia, do you know the address? I need to send the computer. I'm like, see, this is why I want the address on the resume, or just put a PO box. If you don't want your home address, do a PO box. That's fine. But I don't like it when there's nothing there, because again, it causes challenges for us when you get the position, background check and things like that.
Okay. That's fair enough. You guys heard that. So let's talk about specific format for the resume, right? Especially you said early on that the ATS, the applicant tracking system, there are certain buzzwords that it pulls out that it's looking for. I have been told many times you just pretty much copy the job description, which has those words in it. And I've actually seen people who've done that, and they really and truly have gotten, somehow gotten in to an interview, and some higher. So talk about the format that needs to be followed, because when you're doing a resume, especially if you hadn't worked for a long time, I would say that maybe doing chronological may not be the way to grow. So can you speak to that, please?
So if you haven't been working for some time, I still say chronological, because it's clean. We're looking, as a recruiter, talent acquisition team, we're looking for a clean, concise resume. Now, if you are a director level C-suite, that resume looks more fluid, meaning your experience is going to be detailed more because of the level of experience. But if you're not at that level, I still say chronological. We want to see right away. We don't like to see a bunch of words. We don't like to see a lot of verbiage, fluff words. Make it simple. Simple is better. Less is more is what I say, because sometimes you can overcrowd the resume. Then that is a challenge for the ATS system, because that resume goes into the ATS system. The system pulls out, to Gloria's point, certain words, pulls out, like you'll do the ATS and you'll see sometimes it'll already have one position listed. It may say, for me, CLO. That was a position that was already in there. So it's going to pull from the resume. So you don't want the resume to have too much verbiage. You want it to be clear and concise. Entrepreneur, business owner. Okay, business name, owner, principal, whatever your title was, chronologically state, bullet points. What did you do? What did that business do? Because again, we're looking for the accomplishments, if that makes sense. And so I always stick to that. But again, senior level is going to be more fluid. There's going to be more information because they need to see that, if that makes sense.
So Felicia, can you speak to why it is in some companies they want specific dates that you worked at a company, meaning month, the day, and the year?
Yes.
You know, what was the month, the day, and the year that you were separated? Could you speak to why that is? What is it that they are looking for and why?
It's the background check. And this just happened to me with this current role that I'm in. I just got clearance. I've been working, you guys, for 6 weeks. I just got clearance last week because of the dates. Sometimes you don't remember the exact date. You may say May 5th, but it was May 7th. And so the background check is why they want that information. They are really very, in reference to doing your background check, very specific. They want to make sure this person is who they say they are. And so they want the month, like the year, because they want to make sure there's no fraud within your resume. You probably would be shocked to know people do that. And so without those specific dates, it's kind of hard to catch. Gloria's laughing.
No, people don't do that.
They do that. Yes, they.
I'm sorry. I'm like, really? Duh. All right. So you guys heard it, why you need to have those specific dates. That's really important. So let's talk about cover letters real quickly. You know, what are the pros and cons of cover letters? And do the hiring managers even read cover letters?
I was getting ready to say it immediately. Nobody reads them, you guys. They do not. I'm telling you the truth. They do not. You took all that time to do that wonderful presentation with your cover letter. Nobody's looking at. They're going straight to the resume. We're going to the resume. The manager's going to the resume. Nobody's reading the cover letter. So to me, I say ignore that, because they're not going to read it. And I know this for a fact. I've been in corporate now since 2010. Do not read corporate. We do not read those. I don't know why they tell people to do that.
Yeah. So your advice, would they or should they even?
No, I would not do it because it's not even read. You know, cover letters take time. You don't just write your cover letter. You take some time to give some thought to it. And you're doing all this wonderful presentation. And you're like, no, where's the resume? They're not even looking at the cover letter. So, and that's the honest to goodness truth, you guys. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I say do not do that. Do a strong resume. That's all you need. That resume is.
Forget about it. Forget about it. You're like, no, okay. All right. Yeah. Felicia, we've got just a few more, minutes, but we're going to take another really quick break. You guys, I love the questions. I love your comments. Al, I see you're on fire this
Al was the man.
But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys being here. But we're going to take a really quick break and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you for watching the You Didn't Get the Memo show with your inspirational host, Gloria Bailey Ray. It's your contributions that make this happen. To become a sponsor, send an email to youdidn'tgetthememo@gmail.com. That's the letter U, didn't get the memo. If you're not in a space to be a sponsor, but you like what you hear, we simply ask that you support what you like by making a contribution to the show. There are 3 ways to make an online donation. Visit paypal.me/Gloria Bailey Ray or Cash App, or Venmo. Gloria Bailey Ray. Give what you can. Your support is appreciated.
We are tuned in to You Didn't Get the Memo with my awesome guest, Miss Felicia Freeman. She's over here having me. I'm like cracking up because I am just like, okay, the things that you learn and you see. And I appreciate you guys, all of your comments. Some of them I'm not going to say, but I will say that, let's see, Deborah, I'm not quite sure, S&M, in 27 years in HR, she's
Mhm.
me unsuitable things on a resume. And oh my God.
Yes, yes. I
So,
totally agree with you, Deborah. I totally agree with you.
you know,
Totally.
so, guys, remember social media does not die. And everything that you do, and that's usually some of the first places that managers go to is to look
Yes,
up and see if you've got a social media page and what
yes,
has been posted on there. So you really and truly want to be mindful. Just remember that stuff never dies. As we know by now,
yes,
people are pulling up stuff from 15 years ago, 10 years
yes.
ago, and you thought that it had gone away. So I would say, and I think Felicia is agreeing, you want to
I'm like,
let
yes.
that go. Yeah, that's
Because
a
that's
big
part of
yes.
your brand. The social media, you guys, is part of your brand. You're always building your brand. You may think you're just having fun or just saying something on Twitter or whatever it is. It's the brand. You're still building your brand. And to Gloria's point and Deborah's point, they do pay attention to that. Even to get into college, same thing. They're going to the media sites to see who you are. It represents your
Yes.
character.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, Felicia, with that, let's talk about the challenges of how companies are actually pivoting now with more and more people wanting to work remote. Because you know what?
Yeah,
Look, potential
yeah.
employees, the employees are in the catbird seat. Yeah.
Yes, they
So
are.
you
Yes,
you want me? This is how we gonna
yeah,
roll. And
yeah.
so, can you talk about the challenges of actually hiring potential candidates who want to work remote, and how is that even working out? Are companies really embracing it? Some are. Seems like some are not.
At this point, Gloria and audience, working virtually was a surprise to corporate America. I've been working virtually since 2006. So I was working virtually, you guys, before anybody was. How do you do that? I'm like, I'm online all day. I'm at the office. I'm just not physically there. I'm online all day. And so companies have realized that actually, you guys, more productivity when you're working virtually. They found that, they did a study on that. People are more productive working remotely. And they didn't expect that. And so now the transition to your point, Gloria, is coming out of the pandemic. Some companies are trying to transition back in, but you've got resistance. You've got, employees saying, hey, I've been doing this for 2 years. I can still do this. Or they'll do a hybrid model. That's happening quite a bit, meaning 3 days at home, trying to accommodate, because really what we don't want to do, our retention levels are challenged right now. So you don't want to lose your good employees over a fact of they want to be virtual. So they are accommodating right now. They are being very accommodating because,
Yeah,
again, to your point, Gloria, employees are in the seat. They're in the
yeah.
driver's seat right now.
Absolutely. So, Felicia, time flies when you're having
I
fun.
know.
Everyone says, "What am I going to talk about for 55 minutes?" Look, we're approaching the 1 hour mark. So, what do you want people watching the show to take away today?
I want you guys to take away that your brand is so viable. If it's a great brand, it'll take you where you need to go. If it's a challenging brand, you're going to have challenges trying to find a position. No matter how long you've been out of the role that you've been in before the pandemic, or even just recently, there's value in what you do. You need to put that resume has to be the portrait of the value. That's my biggest statement. The resume is the portrait of your value. Take time to do that effectively so that you can get where you need to be. And if you have any questions, welcome to reach out to me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you guys see, I have Felicia's email up here, FeliciaRecruits@gmail.com. And guys, look, definitely, you heard it, and I can say, Felicia, she works hard for her money.
Oh my goodness, you guys, Gloria was one of the best folks I ever worked with. And I'm not just saying that. I mean that.
Oh,
Yes.
stop. Yeah. Well, you know what? I think of this what is this like begets like, and that's the thing. And people who
Yeah.
understand. See, you guys had that southern understanding, sometimes you're on the West Coast, folks forget
Exactly.
where they come from. And they're not used to people like being really direct, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
just telling them, uh, no, that's not going to fly.
No, we're not doing
We're
that.
not doing
Yeah,
that, right? So
absolutely.
it's a different mindset and mind shift. But Felicia, I'm just going to tell you, I don't want you to go anywhere. You stay right there. I'm going to be right back, y'all. I want to thank Miss Felicia Freeman for being on the show today. Listen, I need you guys to do something for me. I need you guys to go to my website. Go to the You Didn't Get the Memo. Um, and, check out the site. Be there. But more importantly, listen, I'm going to ask you guys to follow me no matter what it is. You know what? Subscribe to what it is that I'm doing. After all, it's really and truly about bringing information and um, value to each and every one of you. And I just want to tell you guys so much how much I really and truly appreciate you. I love you. And one of the things I always say to all of you guys, remember, if you didn't take anything away from today's show, then it's you who didn't get the memo. So I want to thank my guest again, Miss Felicia Freeman. Be sure and follow me on all my social media pages, guys. And look, we can do this work without sponsors and without your donations. And I want you to know how much I appreciate it. So until this time next week, you guys, be sure tune in to You Didn't Get the Memo show with me, the authentic coach. I'm your host, Gloria Bailey Ray. Be well. God bless you all. Peace.